On today's Minute of the Apes, you know when my technology doesn't work, I find punching it slightly will kind of get it to start back up again.
That's called a field fix.
Yeah, what he said.
Take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape! The divine bomb. The only good human is a dead human! There is fire, there is smoke. Now fight like apes! The minute of the 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 apes!
Hello and welcome to Minute of the Apes, the daily podcast where we break down every minute of the Planet of the Apes movies 1 minute at a time. I'm Todd. I start with Richard all the time. I'm going to start with you, Sean.
Well, thanks.
What's going on this morning?
I'm trying to keep Gertie entertained.
Yeah, during the open there, you know, before I got JJ putting the screen up and startled me, I was not expecting Gertie to suddenly jump between my open legs. And it was like, oh my. It's like I come into Sean's house and I'm just getting all kinds of overstimulated.
She doesn't understand boundaries.
No. Gertie, you've got to learn.
Well, she's 6 months old.
You got to buy me dinner before you do
Yeah.
that. All right. Anybody got anything this morning? CrossFit
Yeah.
Big D. I just noticed that was a whole G.I. Joe kind of theme on your shirt. I like that.
Yeah, I get a lot of compliments on it.
G.I. Joe I played with as a kid, and then when the cartoon came out, I think I was in college, so I was too old for it. But I dug the crap out of that.
No, you're not in college yet. Wait, how much older are you than me?
Well, I started college in '85.
That might be about right. I think
Yeah.
I was thinking it was like 83, 84, but yeah, I could be wrong. I'm gonna go look
I
this
probably only started watching it at that point, but I actually kind of dug it. It was silly, but it was fun, and made me long for the days of playing with a doll with actual hair on its head. Did you ever have that one that actually had the hair?
The kind
It
of...
had a
Yeah.
beard?
Well, they would. 83.
Okay, so it had been on for a year and a half, 2 years probably before I started.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked it. It was cool. Since then, they've made all these crappy G.I. Joe movies,
Maybe,
whatever.
So I was 13, so I was actually collecting these toys. I
Yeah.
went from buying.
Did you really?
Yeah, I went from buying the Migos originally, which were the
Right.
Marvel, DC, and the Planet of the Apes ones.
Yeah.
Right. Those the 8-inch. What are they? 8-inch dolls with cloth bodies.
Yeah, something like
to
that.
the Superpowers line, which had the and the Star Wars figures. Sorry,
Yeah.
Migos to Star Wars figures and the Superpowers line, the early launch. And then I got probably the first year of Transformers and G.I. Joes because that was that 83, 84. And then by the time I'm like 15, I'm kind of aging out, but I was still kind of buying them to collect them, if you will.
Yeah, I was like, I had... I wasn't into G.I. Joe. I was into some of the figures. So I wanted Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow so I could have the two ninjas fight each other.
Yeah.
And when it came to Transformers, I wanted Starscream so I could have one that I could also put the legs down so you could pretend it was like a Macross ship. And so you would do two things in one because you could pull the arms out as well. So he looked like an airplane that had feet and arms. And then I liked the Boombox one because it also had a little cassette that changed into a bird. Sound wave.
Transformers, for whatever reason, I was of that age where it 100% did not affect me, and that's the reason when these movies come out. Besides the fact that I'm not a big Michael Bay
yeah.
fan, they just don't even register with me.
Oh yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I mean, like I said, I like them because of the way they changed, not
Yeah.
because of watching the cartoons or anything.
It's just, I guess the association. At least I played with the old school G.I. Joes growing up, so at least what is she doing?
She's just pawing at your case.
I don't care that she is.
Yeah.
It was just like, what is that sound?
Yeah.
But
Again, that's not a sex term either.
hey, but those things didn't hit. However, you go back to the Mego. I had all the Planet of the Apes Mego when I was a kid. Even the treehouse, I think they called it, the place that. Oh my God, I loved that thing. Now, what was fun is then years later when I started getting into Star Wars, the figures are so much smaller, yet I still had the treehouse, and so I had to be like they're in the land of the giants kind of thing and playing that.
I had the Star Trek Migos as well.
Oh, I
and
did
they had
too.
the,
Oh, yeah.
the Bridge of the Enterprise.
Yeah.
That little fold-out
With a little
vinyl
paper-
playset.
yeah.
back
And
when
then it
they
had the fake
Transporter,
spinning
transporter.
Yeah.
Man, I wore that thing out.
I mean, what is this? An in between?
It is a little bit, but fine. Just kill it, Sean. We were trying to have some excitement.
Save it for the in-between.
All right.
We don't have fun here. We podcast.
Minute 30. Wow. Minute 13. Tell us what's going on.
All right, we start at minute 13 with that mysterious light swallowing Pericles' iPod and ends with Deltapod not aborting and careening through space as we cut to Davidson's concerned face? I'm not sure.
Well, we'll find out. Here comes minute 13. Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes.
Oberon, come back. Oberon, come in.
I'm getting a mayday, sir.
Alpha Pod.
I don't know, but it's coming in strong.
Put it up. Mayday! Mayday! Come in, guys! Requesting! Go down! Delta Pod abort.
As of minute 13, we have an Oberon's worth of apes and humans and maybe down one Pericles.
All right, here's our visual recap. We have a shot from the inside looking out as we see another AirPod in front of us. They're in space with a wormhole flashing around. It vanishes. Marky Mark is concerned. He flips some switches. The wormhole pulses again. He gets knocked back. He spins around. He flips some more switches. His pod kind of goes away. We go back to the command deck as they are a little bit concerned as a mayday is coming in. They at this point they all abandon the pursuit of Marky Mark
Fuck
to
it.
look over at a weird video of an older face singing "Mayday, Mayday, come in, Mayday." Then we go back to Marky Mark and his pod falling away. All right. How do we even explain this minute? Because again, it's like the narrative of the moment doesn't make. There's no narrative. There is none to be had other than he's chasing and they're not concerned.
Again, we have no sense of what. I'm.
Use your
He's
words.
not going to talk to himself.
Well, I mean,
But it would be interesting if he were still trying to talk to the command, either talk to Pericles or talk to Oberon, because he's not. He's just flipping switches.
well, I think that he
Yeah.
should be actually vocalizing this because if you think about it, when astronauts, when they're doing stuff, they're also telling you what they're doing so that people can verify that the right things are happening. It's like, all right, I'm exiting the space station now. All right, I'm going to take a 90-degree turn. All right, I'm pulling out this. And they, all right, I'm working on the Delta panel now. All right, releasing. They dictate. So that gives you an excuse to have him talking and saying, all right, what's going on? Because at least from a scientific purpose, he ought to be saying, holy shit, there's this big white light I just saw, and Pericles' pod went in. He should be reporting this stuff back
Right,
to them.
That's true. That would help build that tension if he was because as
Giant
it
flash
is,
of light. The pod is
The pod showed
similar
up,
light
and now it's
appears,
gone.
The pod is now gone.
Yeah.
I appear to be entering the giant flash of light. Something
He should
along
be
those
saying
lines,
all that
which
stuff.
would explain why his power goes out in the pod. We would have an explanation about why he suddenly loses power, and then of course he flips more dead switches and it punches. What did you say? It was
It's a
called?
field fix. So you're out in the field, your equipment stops working, you give it a punch until it works again, and it works. That's a field fix.
I've never heard of that before. Is that really a thing?
yeah, it's also that's the whole engineer syndrome that
Yeah.
you would call it engineer in production, and it's like this isn't working.
Punch it
And
first and
works.
see if it
it's like,
works.
seriously, or that they would show up and it just
It
magically
works
starts
whenever
working.
the engineers are here, and then
Does that really work?
It
Yeah.
can if you're thinking of a short, boom, and
It might
jogs
jiggle
it, it
what you
refines
need.
it.
All right.
Yeah.
Or if there's something in the way, if there's dust, it can knock the dust off. So yeah,
I mean,
I agree with Sean's point of if he's at least kind of giving us a narrative of what he's seeing, or if we did hear him go, oh, and they're like, what is it? That draws them all together. Now they're a part of it. Even Mr. Apollo 13 should be saying things like he should be chastising for breaking the rules, but at the same time, I'm getting you home. He should be caring about getting his person back. I'll deal with this later. No one seems to care. And even when they get the weird mayday, they just barely walk over to the screen and huddle around it. And nobody even seems like,
yeah.
well, what? Why am I seeing some old man? They just sort of.
I do want to say that this entire scene was supposed to happen after he gets into the pod and disappears, and not after he's completely disappeared. So the scene in the control room where they're having this Mayday situation happens before we lose him. And they took it from about a minute or two earlier and moved it to this scene here, which may be why they're not quite so crazed. But I did catch a mistake.
Okay.
What's her scientist is standing, and they want her to look from left to right, and they show her back in the chair left to right, and they cut her back standing again. It's right around minute 35, 36.
Second.
Yeah, so, yeah, wait. 35, 36, 37. She's standing.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
She's seated, and then she's standing when he goes alpha pod. They needed her looking back to the captain, so they have her back in the seat again. That's pretty bad.
No one will ever notice the back of the chair there.
But that was pretty bad. That's really pretty bad. They didn't need that.
Nowadays, though, they would completely digitally clean that up and take her chair away, so she wouldn't do that.
Yeah,
you're
but
absolutely right.
They really didn't need that.
Okay, so when the Mayday comes through,
Yes.
wouldn't you, as the captain, go, all right, everybody saw that. That was me, right? That's me, like an old me talking to everybody, right? I'm not crazy. Instead of just going back to Delta Pod.
Well,
Oh, is that who that is? That's an old hymn?
Yeah.
altogether, I thought the moment. So,
I didn't catch that right away, but yeah, that makes more sense that it's an old hymn. Yeah.
But a Mayday's coming in. Why didn't he look and go, Mayday? What's Marky Mark's character's name?
Davidson.
Davidson. Davidson. And then, like, it's not Davidson. Something like that.
Yeah.
Because even when they get up, I'm like, what the fuck are we looking at? I don't mind you putting in nonsensical information, and yet you kind of got to be interested and ask those. Don't questions have to come from the character's mouth when they see something and they're what is going on?
Yeah.
Don't they have to ask that? Instead, it's kind of like, oh, okay. And
All right, go back to work.
You know, I'm not always a fan of the dialogue telling you what's happening, but it would have been nice, to your point, Sean, because I didn't pick up it was the captain. If one of the crew had gone, Captain,
Is that you?
like was able to give me just a little bit of a visual clue that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, who's this random dude?
Yeah.
Like, is that supposed to be Marky Mark? Like, I'm literally trying to figure out who he is. Didn't even connect it with the captain.
Yeah.
Because maybe he hasn't been on screen enough. I'm not really sure. I haven't seen him with a gray beard and old hair.
Yeah.
Old hair. But anyway, it wasn't really supposed to be him. It just says, tilt up to digital screen, out of static figures emerge in quick flashes, jumpy, shadowed, hard to read, audio out of sync. We hear bits and pieces. Help us, massive turbulence, request instructions. So I think it was smart for them to go back in and potentially show that it's an older captain, that they're getting visuals of some tragedy that's supposed to happen in the future.
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of interesting, but we don't stay on it long enough to know that that's what it is.
Or obviously it wasn't clear enough for you to pick up that
wasn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
As you said that, I thought that seems right, and I can't remember if I realized that or thought it before when I'd watched this before, but it's not clear when you watch it. You just, if you're not picking up those are his eyes, you're like, okay, who's the old fucker that's suddenly showing up?
I'll be honest. For this, now that you brought it up, that's the captain.
Mm-hmm.
Other than the moment that the power goes out,
Yeah.
and then this moment here are the only interesting pieces of sci-fi that I've seen so far from the film. Those two things, the mystery of power going out. Well, people didn't panic. That was my critique of the moment. Nobody panicked about the power going out.
Well, maybe this
that
is
was
the first time.
Well, that was
but yeah.
terrifying. And the second thing is this idea of you're getting a foreshadowing of something that may happen in the future. I think that's cool.
I
And
panicked
it's just
because
dropped.
this movie's still going on.
We're only 13 minutes into this film.
I agree with you that I don't care for moments where a character just states what is in front of you. Yet at the same time, it made me think of the Batman that just recently came out when they go to do the mystery with the USB and he goes thumb drive and then it's the thumbs attached. It plays as a joke, but at the same time, it's telling you that he's noticing these details and it's giving information. These characters are not noticing what's happening to them and commenting. Somebody should go, what the, anything like that. David, it's not Davidson. They need to comment. And the fact that they look at it and then they just sit down, I'm not interested in it. If you can't make your characters interest, why am I as a viewer going to be interested?
The other thing I find, I agree with you. The thing that I also find fascinating about this pod is they want to give us the sense that he's drifting by moving the camera inside and around him as he's floating around, right? So the pod itself is spinning. And then when they shoot him, his visuals in the pod, they have it also kind of moving around within, so it looks like he's tumbling. I don't know if this pod gives any type of sense of gravity, but there's only a couple of moments where he's in the pod where it actually looks like he is reacting to the direction or the motion of this zeroless gravity. And this is one of those few times.
Yeah.
And they say I can forgive the fact that the Oberon probably has some type of artificial gravity, but I don't know why he seems to have some in the pod. But this is one of the only few moments where he's reacting to what's happening externally outside the ship.
So last night during that whole shopping trip I've discussed, where before I made my notes, I mentioned to Shelley. She's like, "Which movie is it again you're doing?" I said the Tim Burton one, and her question was, "Oh, what? I haven't heard him in a while. What's he directed?" I said, "Well, he did Dumbo, and has had a couple of Tim Burton-esque odd things." Those Dumbo I never saw. I just don't care about it. I don't care about that. I still think Big Fish, wasn't that the one he did?
Yeah.
I thought that was actually a
sweet
pretty
movie,
good
yeah.
movie. And I think that when he cares about a project, he's good. But I
feel
almost
like-
feel like he was
when it's-
hired because of like Batman, because they knew he could take a franchise.
I feel like when
Yeah,
he
that might be
does
right,
more
yeah.
original material, he
Yeah.
does better than when he does adaptations.
I mean, look, did you ever see Frankenweenie?
Yeah,
So, and he directed that animated,
yeah,
didn't he?
I think he did both of them. The animated short.
Well, I knew he did the short.
stop motion short. I mean,
But that had, even
I
though
mean,
I
the
know
live
it
action.
bothered some people that it had, themes of death and things. But hey, come on, that's part of life. There
hell,
was so much.
Edward Scissorhand. One of the main parts is that his creator dies. I
Right.
mean, yeah.
There was so much emotion in
Beetlejuice.
that.
It's all about death.
But there's, again, quirky, original, thoughtful. Even as a fan of musicals, Sweeney Todd's probably my favorite musical in the world. And he did butcher that some. He took some essential things out, but it still had a narrative. It had purpose. This film just feels like it's somebody putting on the hat to push buttons and make it happen.
Well, okay, so we're not supposed to talk about future minutes, right?
ahead.
So at this
I
particular
grant you
point,
permission.
at this particular point, you're correct. There's nothing Tim Burton
you may speak,
about
my son.
these moments.
Nothing.
Everything from the beginning of this film up to this point, there's nothing that is Tim Burton. When we get later on in the film, I think we will find very Tim Burton moments.
agree.
But right now, there's nothing
Very generic,
fantastic.
yeah.
It's very stiff. Very. This could be an episode of Doctor Who without an energetic doctor on it. We're just
You
in
would
a
not,
sterile
if you
environment.
were to show a Tim Burton fan but not a Tim Burton aficionado these first 10 15 minutes and say who directed this, they would not. Tim Burton would not be your first
No,
choice.
I would not have picked Tim Burton as somebody who directed this first. Maybe there was somebody else who did this first portion.
Maybe his second unit director picked it up, but
Yeah.
I think back to think about the original Batman, and that's not my favorite Batman film at all. However, even in its setup, that is a Tim Burton
Burton,
film. There's
yeah.
a stamp of
the
style,
visual,
and
the music,
everything that's coming at you. He is trying to say something from his point of view. This feels This feels lazy.
Well, I mean, we talked about the opening sequence being done by the same animator of Batman as this as well. That's probably the most exciting moment we had was the opening scene, opening credits of this particular film, because it takes us back. It's kind of teasing us with the idea that we're going back in the same type of weird world that he created for Batman. But the action sequences or the story as it's unfolded right now is just.
I think that you probably hit the nail on the head in that when we do get ahead, when we get Tim Roth, that's his name, right?
Yeah.
And Giamatti and all these people that are great actors in the moments of the Apes, I can think ahead and I think, okay, it's very, very Tim Burton-esque. Even the costumes are Burton-esque. I would have hoped he would have done something here that.
Do you
had
think
a
he's
little more
trying to
push.
balance the sterile with the
Maybe.
exciting, and that's why he went with something so dull for the beginning to kind of
But that's the problem, it's
contrast these
dull.
two? It's dull. Yeah.
And that's not even, I've even been critical of this movies by minute thing because sometimes it takes you from a moment, you just focus so much on that minute, you don't get the totality of how it works. This is dull no matter if you put this on and watch the first 20 minutes of this film, snooze.
Flat.
Yeah.
Snooze.
Well,
All right.
you know, on that point, I had one of my final notes here is, do you think this is really a Beneath the Planet of the Apes remake with Pericles being Taylor, the first one to go out, and then Davidson being Brent, who's sent to rescue him?
Maybe, and that also
And that's
made
why
me,
it's no good.
that made me think of either today or the day before I referenced as Battle. I should have said Beneath. It was Beneath that I was referencing. It just all of a sudden hit when you said Beneath. God knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
Anybody got anything else?
That's
Yeah.
it for me.
Okay. We'll be back tomorrow. Everyone have a great day.
You don't tell me what to do. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
A man